Hi guys, this is Jordan Bunch. We are going to take some time today to discuss discrete trial training. This is a valuable resource not only for BCBAs but for RBTs and the like. So, just to begin, let's talk about what is discrete trial training. Okay. Discrete trial training, we're going to start here kind of at the bottom, just to make sure this is broken down into more layman's terms because it's not a very complicated process by any means. So DTT breaks down skills into small, discrete steps. Okay. Breaking down these concepts allows for more success while teaching the skill. So, for example, if you have a child that you're trying to teach how to, let's say we're trying to teach them how to tie his shoes. Okay. We don't want to be like, hey, this is how you tie your shoes and just be like, here you go. For a lot of kids, that doesn't work. We need to break it down into smaller, more discrete components. That way it does make sense. And this is something that is beneficial, for a lot of our kiddos, but um, specifically with autism spectrum disorder. We want to make the steps smaller and more understandable to make sure that the child can keep up with the pace of learning and it improves their overall success as a result. So, this is an excellent quote here by Lerman, Valentino, and LeBlanc. Um, it says the discrete trial training approach to early intervention is highly effective for remediating the social, communication, academic, and self help difficulties that are associated with the diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. Secondly, we're going to take a look. That's something that kind of goes hand in hand. We're going to look at the three-term contingency. This is ABC, antecedent behavior consequence. So the antecedent, simply the events that lead to a behavior, what happens prior to the behavior occurring. So these are things that could perhaps trigger a behavior, just different environmental variables that before the behavior occurs, you can see, well, this is something that's happened. So then we move on to the behavior, kind of self-exclamatory. Um, the actual behavior that is being recorded. This takes a subjective look at what the behavior is that the individual is exhibiting. And then we're looking at consequence, finally. Consequence, these are just the direct implications that result from the behavior. So whether that be reprimands, whether that be rewards for good behaviors, whether that be attention, what happens as a result. So next, we have this excellent graphic from Pratt and Stewart that kind of goes over ABCs, right? So this gives us kind of a brief example. We're starting with antecedent at the very beginning. That's your first step. The cue to perform some behavior that leads to a reward. In this specific example, this isn't a one-size-fits-all example. Then the behavior, which is the response, which we just discussed, the child's action as a result of the cue. And then consequence is what happens following the response. Um, Obviously, in this situation, a reward for correct responding. And then at the end, we have our pause. That's just where um, we take a break, and then we move on to recording the next set of ABCs and the three-term contingency. We look at positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement's a pretty big deal because whenever we're trying to differentiate what's positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, that kind of thing, these commonly get confused. So we're going to start out. We're going to try to really break this down into something that's a little bit more simple. So positive reinforcement is just basically when something is added to the environment in hopes of increasing the desirable behavior in the future. Okay. So an example that we can associate with that is a mom provides a child a monetary allowance for doing chores. So I wanted to emphasize here at the end, this does not have to be a physical item. That's a reward. This can even be something as simple as verbal praise. It doesn't have to be a monetary item, it doesn't have to be a physical item, okay? Next, we're going to look at negative reinforcement. So negative reinforcement occurs when something is taken away as a result of a behavior. So it says negative reinforcement should not be thought of as a punishment procedure. With negative reinforcement, you're increasing a behavior, whereas with punishment, you're decreasing a behavior. Okay. So a lot of times we hear negative reinforcement, so we put this connotation in our head. This is negative, whenever it's truly not a negative thing. Okay. So negative punishment, sometimes we get that confused. So an example of this would be just getting out of bed earlier during the morning to avoid hearing the alarm. I absolutely hate hearing the alarm when I get up every morning. That's my trigger, right? So if that's the case, I may get out of bed earlier to avoid that adversive stimulus that I know is going to drive me crazy, right? So in that mind, in that sense, the alarm will be it. So then we're going to look at positive versus negative reinforcements. This is an infographic by Made Easy School. I'll let you guys take a second. We look at positive, how can we practice reinforcement with kids? So this gives us a general outlook of how to do that. This is, let's look at this from a parenting perspective. Okay, so we're positive reinforcement. You make a kid their favorite dish after they finish their homework. You take them to the park. They clean their room. You clap and cheer them every time they solve a math problem. That's your verbal praise aspect, right? This isn't bribery. So when we're looking at positive reinforcement, we're not bribing the child, because it can be something as simple as verbal praise. It doesn't have to be a physical item that you're giving, right? And then complying with their request if they ask you politely. So if my child asks me, hey, can we go outside, shoot some hoops? They ask me very politely to do it in a appropriate manner, functional manner. I might go out and spend that time with them. Okay. Negative reinforcement, studying really hard to avoid failing an exam. That's something you're trying to prevent from happening, right? Putting one's toys at the right place after playing to avoid getting them lost or misplaced. Doing their homework on time to save their television privileges, okay, or eating healthy to avoid falling sick. So we're going to look a little bit today what exactly is punishment. Okay, we hear the word punishment, we don't think anything positive. Okay, when we hear the word punishment, but in the field of ABA, punishment's not necessarily as bad as it may seem on the surface. Okay. So we want to make sure we can differentiate positive versus negative punishment. These are things that punishment procedures are things that I obviously try to stay away from, but these are effective options in some situations. Okay. So it's important we still are aware of them. It's important that we have a in-depth knowledge of them. So we'll start out. This is a quote by Justin Leaf in 2019. And I think there were some more contributors to this same research journal. So they will be at the end of the references section. But punishment is any stimulus change following a response that decreases the probability of that response occurring in similar situations in the future. Okay. We'll look at positive punishment. Positive punishment decreases behavior by adding something that's adversive, otherwise bad. Okay. An example would be reprimanding a child to stop talking during class. Okay. Negative punishment, we're looking at decreasing the undesirable behavior by taking away something preferred. So this is your taking away a child's tablet after he exhibits problem behaviors. This is where a child loses their privileges, that kind of thing, right? So next, we're going to talk about maintenance. Maintenance is so crucial in the field of ABA. So, the field of applied behavior analysis operates largely to develop skill acquisition, and in doing so, to promote maintenance of these skills. Okay, so simply, once the intervention's over, how long can a child still maintain the behaviors that they learn? Right. So the example I came up with for this is the learner is taught how to tie a shoe. This behavior is successfully maintained. They can still perform the task years later without practice. Okay. This is, uh, for me, an example of this in my own personal life is I can play guitar, right? I can sit down a guitar for 8, 9 months at a time. And if I pick it back up, I still know how to play it, right? Because I've learned how to play guitar, right? It's been maintained. Next, we're going to look at generalization. This is probably the most crucial slide that we're going to discuss. Generalization is the end goal for taught ABA interventions. It's where we want to be at, everybody. How well do newly taught skills translate to different environments, right? So an example I came up with is a child learns how to brush his teeth in the clinical setting. All of a sudden, he does the task at home and at school. This behavior has generalized to other environments. It's socially significant because it's able to translate into different environments. And then here are the references. Thank you guys so much for your time. I appreciate your time.